It starts with a simple thought. You're in the mirror, styling your hair one morning, and you notice a little more scalp than usual. Maybe your hairline looks slightly higher. Maybe the crown feels thinner under your fingers. And then the thought hits. My dad lost his hair around my age. Is it happening to me too? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of men and even women have asked the same question. Hair loss and genetics are so deeply connected that it's almost become a family legacy, passed down like eye color or height. But the truth is much more complex than "my dad's bald, so I will be too." In this video, we'll break it all down. What really causes hereditary hair loss, how much your parents' genes influence it, and what you can actually do, even if baldness runs in your family. 1. The genetic blueprint of baldness. Let's start with the basics. When we talk about genetic hair loss, what we're really describing is androgenetic alopecia, the scientific name for male and female pattern baldness. It's called androgenetic because two main factors are at play. Androgens, hormones, especially one called DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Genetics, your inherited sensitivity to those hormones. Here's the key part. It's not the amount of DHT that matters most. It's how your hair follicles respond to it. If your follicles are genetically sensitive to DHT, they'll begin to shrink over time, a process called miniaturization. The hair grows back thinner and shorter after each cycle, until eventually the follicle stops producing visible hair at all. So the gene doesn't necessarily say, "you will go bald." It says, "your follicles are more sensitive to DHT than others." That's the real inheritance, not baldness itself, but the susceptibility to baldness. 2. The myth of the baldness gene. You've probably heard the old saying, "if your mother's father was bald, you'll be bald too." That's been repeated so many times, it's almost treated like scientific fact. But it's not that simple. Yes, the AR gene, located on the X chromosome you inherit from your mother, does play a major role. This gene affects how your body processes androgens, including DHT. So if your maternal grandfather was bald, you might inherit that sensitivity through your mother's side. However, baldness is polygenic, meaning it's influenced by multiple genes from both parents. So your father's genetics matter too. If your dad is bald, it definitely increases your odds, but it doesn't guarantee anything. There are countless men whose fathers are bald, but who maintain thick hair well into their 50s. And the opposite is true too. Men who lose their hair early, despite both parents having full heads of hair. Genetics load the gun, but environment, hormones, and lifestyle pull the trigger. 3. How hereditary baldness progresses. One of the first signs of hereditary hair loss is usually a receding hairline, especially around the temples. This forms the classic M shape that men recognize in the mirror. Others might first notice thinning at the crown, that circular spot on the back of the head. Over time, these areas can expand and meet in the middle, creating the familiar horseshoe pattern of baldness. But this doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, gradual process that can take years, sometimes even decades. In fact, most men who start losing hair in their 20s won't go completely bald. They might just have a mature hairline, slightly higher than when they were teenagers, but still a healthy amount of hair. The timeline and severity vary wildly depending on your genetic mix and hormone levels. 4. Your father's hair, what it actually means. Let's go back to that original question. My dad was bald. Does that mean I'm doomed? Not necessarily. Think of your DNA like a recipe. You share ingredients with your father, but the proportions differ. You might have inherited his eye color but not his hair sensitivity genes. Even identical twins, who share the exact same DNA, can have different hair loss patterns depending on lifestyle, stress, and health factors. That's because genes determine potential, not destiny. Yes, having a bald father increases your risk, but risk isn't the same as certainty. It's like having a family history of diabetes. It raises your chances, but diet, exercise, and habits still matter enormously. 5. DHT, the real villain and misunderstood one. Let's talk about DHT, the hormone that everyone blames for hair loss. DHT is a byproduct of testosterone. An enzyme called 5-alpha reductase converts a small portion of testosterone into DHT. This hormone is actually important for things like muscle growth, libido, and male development during puberty. The problem arises when hair follicles, especially those on the scalp, are genetically sensitive to DHT. When DHT binds to receptors in those follicles, it triggers them to shrink over time. Now, here's what's fascinating. The hair on the back and sides of your head isn't as sensitive to DHT. That assess why even men with severe baldness often still have hair around the back. It is genetically resistant. That is also why hair transplants work. Those resistant follicles can be moved to bald areas and continue growing normally. So again, it's not the hormone itself, it's your genetic reaction to it. 6. The role of mother versus father. So, which side of the family matters more, moms or dads? The short answer, both. But let's break it down. Studies show that the AR gene and a few others on the X chromosome do influence baldness risk, that S from your mother's side. However, newer research has found dozens of additional genes scattered across your other chromosomes that come from both parents. So if your dad is bald and your maternal grandfather had full hair, you might still inherit strong baldness genes from your dad's side, and vice versa. That is why genetic prediction isn't 100% accurate yet. There are too many interacting factors. But one thing is certain. If both your dad and your maternal grandfather experience significant hair loss, your chances are very high. 7. Early signs. You might inherit it. If you're in your late teens or 20s and want to know whether you'd be following in your dad's footsteps, here are some early signs to watch for: receding hairline, especially at the temples, thinning crown that shows more scalp under bright light, excessive shedding, more than 100 hairs a day, over several months, miniaturized hairs, short, thin strands compared to the rest, photos showing visible change in density over time. Keep in mind, normal hair shedding is part of the growth cycle. But if you notice consistent thinning in specific areas, it might be early androgenetic alopecia. 8. The psychological side. Watching your hair thin, especially when you're young, can be emotionally heavy. You start comparing yourself to your dad, or even fearing you'll look old too soon. It's not just vanity, it's identity. Hair is tied to youth, health, and self-image. That's why early hair loss often leads to anxiety or even mild depression in young men. You feel like something is slipping away before it should. But here's the key thing to remember. You have options. And in this generation, unlike your fathers, you actually have science, treatments, and prevention methods that work. 9. Why it's happening earlier. Now, there's another layer to this story. Hair loss seems to be happening earlier than it did for previous generations. Part of that is awareness. We notice it sooner because of HD cameras and social media, but there's more. Stress levels, diet, sleep, and even environmental factors like pollution can influence hormone balance and inflammation. These don't directly cause genetic baldness, but they can accelerate it. So if your dad started losing hair at 35 and you're seeing signs at 25, it doesn't mean your genes got worse. It might just be lifestyle speed up. 10. Can you outsmart your genes? And this is where things get interesting. While you can't change your genetic code, you can change how it's expressed, a field called epigenetics. For example, maintaining stable testosterone and DHT levels, improving scalp health, and reducing chronic inflammation can slow or even stop the genetic trigger from fully activating. There are men with strong family histories of baldness who've maintained their hair into old age simply through early prevention and consistent care. Your DNA writes the outline, but you still hold the pen. 11. The power of early prevention. If you've got a family history of hair loss, the most important thing you can do is act early. Genetic baldness doesn't happen overnight, it's gradual. That means you can slow or even halt its progress before it becomes noticeable. The key: recognize the early warning signs and don't wait until it's too late. Think of it like dental care. You don't wait until every tooth hurts to start brushing and flossing. You prevent damage before it happens. The same logic applies here. You can maintain your genetic hair longer with consistency and awareness. 12. Medical treatments that actually work. Let us be honest. There is a ton of misinformation online about hair loss cures. But science has actually produced a few treatments that do work, clinically proven and backed by years of research. Let's break them down. 1. Finasteride, Propecia. Finasteride is a prescription medication that blocks the enzyme 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone into DHT. By reducing DHT levels in the scalp, it slows down, and in many cases reverses, the miniaturization of hair follicles. Clinical trials show that around 80–90% of men maintain or regrow hair with consistent finasteride use. It's one of the most effective tools against genetic hair loss. However, it's not without controversy. Some users report side effects such as decreased libido or mood changes. These effects are relatively rare, but they're worth discussing with a doctor before starting. 2. Minoxidil, Rogaine. Minoxidil works differently. It doesn't block DHT. Instead, it stimulates blood flow to the follicles and prolongs the growth phase of hair. It can help revive weakened follicles, even in genetically affected areas. It's available over the counter and can be used by both men and women. But it requires consistency. Stopping treatment can lead to gradual shedding again. 3. Combining both. Many dermatologists recommend using both finasteride and minoxidil together. They attack the problem from two sides. One reduces the cause, DHT, the other strengthens regrowth. When used together under proper supervision, this combination can dramatically improve outcomes, even for those with a strong family history of baldness. 13. Natural and lifestyle support. While medications are powerful, lifestyle plays a massive supporting role. Genetic hair loss might be coded in your DNA, but your environment determines how strongly those genes express themselves. Here are some scientifically backed lifestyle tweaks that make a real difference. Balanced nutrition. Hair is made primarily of protein, keratin. A diet rich in protein, iron, zinc, vitamin D, and omega-3 fatty acids supports healthy growth. Eggs, lean meat, nuts, salmon, and leafy greens are great options. Deficiencies in these nutrients can accelerate hair loss, even if your genes are stable. Stress management. Chronic stress increases cortisol, which can disrupt your hormonal balance. This doesn't directly turn on baldness genes, but can speed up shedding. Mindfulness, regular sleep, and exercise can help regulate hormones and blood flow, both crucial for scalp health. Scalp health. A clean, stimulated scalp is a fertile ground for growth. Gentle exfoliation, scalp massage, and avoiding harsh shampoos can help maintain follicle health. Poor scalp circulation is like poor soil for plants. Even good seeds can't thrive. Avoiding inflammatory triggers. Smoking, heavy alcohol use, and excessive processed foods can increase systemic inflammation, which in turn can worsen hair miniaturization. Keeping inflammation low supports both hormones and follicle integrity. 14. Advanced modern treatments. For those who want to take it further, modern dermatology now offers cutting-edge treatments that go beyond traditional medication. Platelet-rich plasma (PRP) therapy. PRP involves taking a small sample of your blood, spinning it to isolate the plasma rich in growth factors, and injecting it into your scalp. These growth factors signal your follicles to regenerate and strengthen. PRP doesn't rewrite genetics, but it can reactivate dormant follicles and improve density. Results vary, but many users report noticeable improvement within 3 to 6 months. Low-level laser therapy, LLT. Devices like laser combs or caps use specific light wavelengths to stimulate follicles and boost circulation. It's a non-invasive, painless method, often used alongside medications for added results. Hair transplants. As mentioned earlier, hair from the sides and back of your head is genetically resistant to DHT. A transplant moves these resilient follicles to the thinning areas. Because they keep their original DNA, they continue growing even in a bald-prone zone. Modern techniques like FUE, follicular unit extraction, make transplants look natural and leave minimal scarring. 15. Understanding your genetics in 2025. Today, genetic testing has advanced to the point where you can actually map your hair loss risk. Companies offer DNA tests that analyze genes associated with androgen sensitivity and hair follicle resistance. These tests can predict your likelihood of baldness, not perfectly, but with surprising accuracy. They can also help guide your treatment plan. For example, whether you're likely to respond better to DHT blockers or growth stimulants. So, rather than fearing your genetic fate, you can use it to your advantage. Knowledge truly is power here. 16. When it's not genetic. It's also important to note that not all hair loss is hereditary. Conditions like alopecia areata, an autoimmune disorder, thyroid imbalance, iron deficiency, or even harsh hairstyles can cause thinning or patchy loss. These types are often reversible once the underlying issue is treated. That's why a proper medical evaluation is crucial. Jumping to conclusions based solely on your dad's baldness can lead to misdiagnosis and wasted time. 17. The mindset shift. Acceptance versus action. At some point, every man with a baldness gene faces a decision. Do I fight it or accept it? Neither path is wrong. The key is owning your choice. If you choose prevention, start early and stay consistent. Science is more advanced than ever, and the earlier you act, the better the outcome. If you choose acceptance, that's equally powerful. Confidence isn't determined by hair, it's determined by how you carry yourself. Many of the most admired men in history, from The Rock to Jason Statham, are bald and unapologetically proud. What's tragic isn't losing hair, it's losing self-worth. Don't let that happen. 18. The father-son connection. For many men, hair loss brings an emotional connection to their fathers. It's almost symbolic. You start seeing your dad's reflection in your own hairline. Some feel fear, others feel nostalgia. But here's a thought. What if, instead of seeing it as inheriting baldness, you saw it as inheriting wisdom? Your dad probably didn't have access to the information and tools you do now. He might have accepted it because he didn't have another option. You do. You can honor your genetics by understanding them, not by fearing them. 19. Myths that need to die. Before we wrap up, let's debunk a few common myths. Wearing hats causes baldness. False. Hats don't restrict circulation or affect follicle health. Shaving your head makes hair grow thicker. False. Shaving only makes new growth appear thicker because of blunt edges. It doesn't affect the root. Hair loss only happens to old men. False. Studies show nearly 25% of men experience noticeable thinning before age 25. Supplements alone can stop baldness. False. Vitamins help if you're deficient, but they can't override genetic DHT sensitivity. Stress is the main cause. Not entirely. Stress can worsen shedding, but genetics are usually the root cause. Clearing out these myths helps focus on what actually matters: hormones, genetics, and early intervention. 20. The future of hair loss treatment. The good news? We're entering a new era of biotechnology where genetic hair loss might soon be fully reversible. Researchers are experimenting with stem cell therapy, hair cloning, and gene editing, techniques that could regrow hair from scratch by reprogramming follicle cells. Early trials show promise, especially in Japan and South Korea. In the next 5–10 years, it is possible that baldness will be entirely optional, just like poor eyesight is fixable with glasses or surgery today. So even if you have strong baldness genes, the story isn't over. We're closer than ever to a real cure. 21. Final thoughts. DNA isn't destiny. Let's bring it full circle. If your father was bald, that doesn't seal your fate. It just gives you a roadmap and maybe a bit of motivation. You can't change your DNA, but you can change your daily actions, your awareness, and your choices. Genes explain the why. You control the when. And in some cases, even the if. So instead of asking, "Am I next?" ask, "What can I do now to take control?" Because the truth is, you're not your father's hairline. You're your own evolution of it. And whether you keep it, regrow it, or rock it shaved, it's still you.